Hello and welcome to Between the Rows. I'm your host this week, Dave Bedard. You can expect to hear a lot more in the not-too-distant future about cybersecurity on the farm and the role that farmers can play in helping to tighten up the agriculture sector's digital safety net. We'll be talking to the lead investigator on a new project looking at where the gaps are and what we can do collectively to come up with some solutions.
We should see a greater level of collective awareness and engagement, including among industry, policy, public safety, and national security.
Statistics Canada has just put out its first estimates of what all of you are planning to see this spring and how much.
It isn't enough because of the fact that we've seen such strong demand for canola, and it's the reason prices are as high as they are. But it does make it a challenge for next year.
All this coming up on Between the Rows after this.
Thanks for calling the Crop Guru.
Yeah, I'm wondering about increasing yield and return with optimal P&K applications.
Reply hazy, try again.
Okay, I also need a nutrient removal calculator.
Cannot predict now.
Hold on. Are you using a magic 8-ball?
Signs point to yes?
Get less guessing and more data. Expert research, advice, and soil management tools are available for free at Nutrien Economics. That's nutrien-economics.com.
It's no secret that the business of farming is going increasingly online, and just recently the federal government announced funding for a campaign to help assess the state of cybersecurity across Canada's agriculture sector and promote cybersecurity across the sector as well. The campaign is called, appropriately enough, the Cybersecurity Capacity in Canadian Agriculture Project, and spearheading it is a Saskatoon-based organization called the Community Safety Knowledge Alliance. Janos Bochner is the CSKA's lead investigator down east in Guelph, and he joins us now. Dr. Bochner, hi, and welcome to Between the Rows.
Hello, Dave. It's great to be with you today, and very appreciative of the interest of Glacier FarmMedia in our work, as well as grateful for the support of Public Safety Canada.
Well, you're very welcome. And first, I'd like to talk a bit about the Community Safety Knowledge Alliance and its mission and where cybersecurity fits into that.
You bet. So CSKA is a Canadian nonprofit that supports governments and others in developing, implementing, and assessing new kinds of approaches to community safety and well-being. So, we do this in a variety of ways. Some of these include mobilizing, bringing together, and facilitating research, as well as new knowledge development on community safety and well-being. And we do this in collaboration with, communities, industry, government, research and tech organizations, as well as academia. So, why our involvement in this project? Well, there's a natural direct line of sight between the security and well-being of the ag sector and the safety and security and well-being of farm families and communities.
Mm-hmm.
So really put simply, cyber attacks are another kind of event that harms businesses, families, and the prosperity of communities.
And we do hear a lot about cybersecurity in general terms these days, but why was agriculture identified as a specific sector at risk for the purposes of this project?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. So the short answer is that ag food is a little bit newer to digital technologies than other sectors are, but it may end up, moving towards digitalization faster than the others have had to. So this, along with a rapidly evolving landscape of cybercrime and cyber disruptions, is expanding the number of risks the sector may have to face at an earlier stage of adoption and cybersecurity maturity. And if I unpack this a little bit, there are four main things that we're noticing. One is that, certainly ag is one of the most important sectors of the Canadian economy. It contributes to the livelihoods of millions of people, along with the vitality and well-being of our rural communities. So its security in the cyber area is really important and consequential. The Advisory Council on Economic Growth proposed that an important way to achieve its ambitious 21st century recommendations would be by Canada becoming the most trusted source globally of safe and sustainably produced food, as well as, doing our part around sustainable development goals. So again, you can see why focusing on how the ag sector is going to be able to do this and enabling them to do that in a safe and secure way is going to be really important. The second piece is the Canadian ag food sector like those around the world, is in the midst of a transformation involving its role on a global scale and the nature and practices of primary production. So, like other producers, Canadians are striving to enhance their productivity and efficiency and the profitability of their operations. And they're doing this through a variety of new processes, practices, and technologies. These are often known by terms like smart farming, precision agriculture, and sometimes Ag 4.0. And then the third piece is the ag food system is in its own way as important a critical infrastructure for Canada as more traditional systems like the power grid, water supply, telecommunications, and the workings of the financial services sector. But it hasn't developed the same level the others have in relation to cyber risk management, protection, and resilience. And then the last piece here really is that there are multiple connections within the ag food sector and between the sector and other critical infrastructures. These have been created through digital technologies, communications, and also overlapping supply chains. These are together driving really important efficiencies, but they also represent what some people call an expanded threat landscape. In other words, there are more and more points of opportunity to cause disruptions. Where lots of these interdependencies exist, a disruption of one or two components can have a bunch of knock on impacts on the others. In other words, risks and impacts can be amplified. So when you put all of this together, it represents a great deal of promise for Canadians and for the Canadian economy, and also, if not managed carefully, a bunch of risks that so far haven't been a prominent part of this particular conversation, but really deserve to be.
Hmm. I'd like to talk about some of those risks as well, but
Yeah.
I do find it interesting in terms of infrastructure that agriculture is certainly expanding its use of online technology and digital tech generally. Its access to high speed and broadband is still somewhat dodgy. In terms of security and safety, is that a bit of a factor in and of itself?
Yeah, so I mean, a fifth of all Canadians live and work in rural communities, and there have been a lot of demographic and tech focused changes that are creating new opportunities for these communities, but also creating some disruptions that people have to adapt to. So, I think as you're suggesting. In support of rural prosperity, the government of Canada has identified rural economic development as an important national priority. And in fact, when you look at the economic development strategy for rural Canada, it includes things like achieving high speed internet and mobile connectivity, and
Hmm.
also developing climate resilient infrastructure, which is kind of an important element of Ag 4.0 as well. And so that we have an important commitment to addressing the broadband issue, as you're saying. If this is resolved as quickly as many hope, one of the things it could mean is an accelerated embrace of smart farming technologies. However, if these technologies are implemented too quickly without attention to how the various components fit together within a secure, farm-based cyber system, the result could be, what you might call smart farming that isn't always secure farming.
Hmm. And looking at the speed of adoption, you've said recently, as I recall,
Yeah.
that it's getting tougher for operators to keep pace with the rate of change in terms of
Mhm.
the potential cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities that are out there. I was wondering if you could expand a bit on that concern and what farmers need to be aware of.
Yeah, well, first I'd say that farmers, by the nature of their work and their traditions, are really good risk managers. But increasingly, they've got a lot to juggle.
Hmm.
So then, the nature, the number, and the intensity of cyber threats is evolving quickly across all sectors. These are moving beyond simple identity theft or data theft or ransomware attacks, although these are still very important, towards more sophisticated exploits that sometimes involve a combination of players, even including nation state actors. So if you think about the recent solar wind situation down in the US, a point of entry that compromised thousands of their government departments was through the system software they all purchased from a single vendor. It's still not clear exactly what the motivations were behind that exploit, and in fact, what that exploit might be up to. But it's likely that some exploits that we've already seen and that we're going to see in the future really could be about more than one thing. So, for example, hacks into farm-based systems that modify data can result in misleading information about livestock or crops, and that can serve a number of purposes. So it could be, about industrial espionage, disrupting inputs to control systems, or market manipulation, things like that. It could be about hacktivism. Could also be about international trade processes. And if you have things like that that are combined with social media based influence operations that make false claims about some aspect of the ag food system, the results there could range from, derailed trade arrangement to critical supply chain interruptions. So what we're starting to see is that, increasingly, all sectors are facing the risk of these kinds of layered and more sophisticated exploits where they're not just one thing. They're not just about a bad guy stealing some data that they're going to then, sell on the black market. It could be about that, but it could also be in support of some other goals that we're less aware of in that moment.
Now, you mentioned some examples there. Do we have any other examples of sort of the vulnerabilities of the ag sector specifically?
Yeah, you bet. And I would say that what we plan to do is to start to investigate that with our project. There really hasn't been very much research on this topic to date, but what has been done is informative. I mean, for example, a recent set of case studies of the Finnish dairy industry concluded that a key issue for cybersecurity there was the lack of training for farm staff. Another was the lack of segregation between business computers and communications networks and home computers and communication networks. So, you can imagine a busy mom and pop operation. Both parents are also working other jobs. The kids are studying at home today, certainly, and they may all be using the same network to do their work, to surf the web, to communicate with their friends and family members, and also to operate their farm equipment and conduct their business. So that was something that they identified that's really a potential problem. There are other kinds of issues that were observed, including things like, network equipment and what people call network typology. In other words, how everything is kind of configured to work together on the farm. Uh, Really importantly, things like protection against malicious software or protecting endpoints. You think about how more and more farms are using things like wireless sensor networks. They're not always able to ensure that all of those different connected elements of their system have the safeguards that they need to be able to do the work they need to do in a safe and secure way. So that's really important. Other things are kind of simple but really important as well. Sometimes video feeds aren't focusing on the right things, or server cabinets can be exposed to moisture, dust, or interruptions by wildlife and pests. So when we think about this, we're thinking not always about malicious activities, but sometimes inadvertent things that can cause disruptions to how the system works. And of course, the biggest thing is always human error, whether it's an inadvertent mistake that someone makes by clicking on a malicious email, forgetting to do something that's going to safeguard the integrity of equipment, or, in some cases, maybe a disgruntled former worker attempts to sabotage something or sell some information to a third party. So these are some of the things that we're noticing. I guess, in addition to that, what we do know is that, as I suggested, dependencies on multiple data streams with multiple points of connectivity create openings and vulnerabilities to attack. Really importantly for any business is, not thinking enough about risk planning that also includes things like human error and what we could call cyber hygiene. So if we think about, farms are increasingly, corporatizing themselves, whether as a family corporation or some other corporation, just like any other business. cybersecurity needs to be considered as part of enterprise risk management. And traditionally, it's been difficult for most businesses to really start to shift their perspective and shift their culture to recognize the importance of this as kind of a C-suite set of activities and perspectives. Farms would be no different, but they're in some ways more vulnerable, and that's going to be a really important thing that they can do to start to think differently.
Hmm. Now, obviously, this project is still, or this campaign rather, is still in the relatively early stages.
Yes.
What do we know that we don't know relative to other sectors about cybersecurity and ag?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Dave. And as I alluded to a few moments ago, I think one of the things that I don't think we have a really good handle on yet is the speed of adoption of smart farming technologies across the country, including data analytics services for decision support, as well as others. The ag food sector here covers a really broad range of producers. It's regionally diversified. If we take an example of dairy producers again, some may find advantages in transitioning to automated milking parlors. Others may find that the cost of entry right now for them is too high. Cattle producers may or may not move quickly to adopt wearable or implantable technology in their livestock. But by contrast, poultry operations and hog barns rely on environmental control systems for productivity and animal welfare. And we may see increasing integration between those and other farm based technologies. And certainly things like vertical farms are all about the application of new sensor analytic and control system technology. So this is something to really think about and keep our eye on as well. Even if some groups of primary producers don't embrace smart farming technologies as quickly as others, their supply chains may have critical pinch points enabled by technology. For example, small scale cattle producers may not feel they need to move quickly in this direction, but the much smaller number of finishing operations are already there, and technology is a feature of the concentrated number of processing operations in Canada. So, if we focus only on the producer level, we might miss important vulnerabilities associated with tech enabled elements of a particular supply chain. And I guess finally, some sub-tech sectors digitalize more rapidly than others, and as a result, they can lead the way in navigating that minefield of cyber threats. This is why collective learning and dialogue is going to be so important here.
Hmm. And which dovetails nicely into my next question. What would the CSKA like to see in terms of farmer participation in this project?
Yeah, so over the coming year, we'll begin reaching out to producers and industry sector representatives to begin this all important learning and dialogue process. We're going to be taking a variety of approaches here, including direct engagement with the ag food sector through conversations, focus groups, and a survey, as well as ongoing collaboration to develop and assess a set of resources that they can use to strengthen their cybersecurity position, speaking in a language that's meaningful to them, reflecting back their lived experience to them in ways that are understandable and accessible. Additionally, some of our great colleagues over at the University of Guelph's Food for Thought initiative will be releasing a nationwide survey shortly with Stratus Ag Research, and they're focusing on getting farmer perspectives about digital technology use and agri-food data governance with a bit about cybersecurity as well. So they're going to use their survey findings to inform the development of an app to help farmers monitor their ag devices to prevent hacking. And we have a nice working relationship with them over there. So both of our groups can work collaboratively to bring value to the Canadian ag food sector. At the end of the day, we hope farmers will feel welcome to participate in our learning and development process, and invite them to start thinking about what they want us to know and what they feel they need to know. We'll be reaching out in the next coming months for sure.
Hmm. And by the time this project and this campaign is complete, what can Canadian farmers hope to see coming out the other end of this?
Yeah, so they'll see that they were engaged and listened to about their understandings and requirements related to cybersecurity. They'll see understandable, useful, non-technical resources were developed in consultation with them based on their needs. We should see a greater level of collective awareness and engagement, including among industry, policy, public safety, and national security. And then lastly, related to that, we should see momentum towards mutual aid, public-private dialogue to strengthen cybersecurity and resilience at both, local and national levels. We're really all in this together. And as I mentioned earlier, because um, increasingly these cyber exploits are about more than one thing and can involve nation state actors, it's about everybody working together, sharing knowledge and learnings, thinking from more of a collective defense perspective, and having dialogue, conversations, and cooperation between themselves, but also between other critical infrastructures, as well as public safety and national security actors. Those are the kinds of things that are going to build collective capacity and be more sustainable and more effective in the long term.
Mm-hmm. And with all that in mind, I'm already feeling considerably less terrified than when you were listing off the the risks to the sector. We'll certainly be watching for more information and for more outreach from the CSKA in the very near future. Dr. Bochner, thank you very much for your time today.
My great pleasure, Dave. Thanks so much for your interest, and I look forward to keeping you up to date as we go forward with this.
Look forward to hearing more. Dr. János Bochner is the lead investigator with the Community Safety Knowledge Alliance in Guelph. You're listening to Between the Rows. I'm your host this week, Dave Bedard. Well, it's Tuesday afternoon as we speak, and Statistics Canada this morning released its first estimates for principal field crop areas for this spring. So where do Canadian grain markets go from here? That's why we've got Bruce Burnett, the Director of Weather and Markets for Glacier Markets Farm, on the line. Bruce, hi, and welcome back to Between the Rows.
Good to be here.
So it looks like we're going to see canola acres increase this year, but not by as much as the canola trade was expecting. So if I'm new crop canola values, what do I take from this?
Well, certainly I think it's a concern because of the fact that the acreage only increased about 750,000 acres from last year to 21.5 million acres, which again is a lot of canola area. But it isn't enough because of the fact that we've seen such strong demand for canola, and it's the reason prices are as high as they are. But it does make it a challenge for next year, especially if we don't get average to above average yields in order to supply all the customers and to crush as much canola as we would like to in Canada here. So I think again it's going to support new crop values as we move through the spring season here. Certainly, this report I think also really emphasized that there is more than one crop out there that the farmers are looking to plant this year because of the high prices for virtually all the commodities.
Mm-hmm. I noticed barley acres, of course, they were up, but that wasn't an entirely unexpected development either, was it?
No, it wasn't. But the barley area was quite a bit stronger, I think, than people were expecting. Up over 1 million acres. Again, I think the demand for barley is going to be strong this year, and it's one of the reasons why the canola area probably didn't increase as much as people thought it would. Again, the footprint for barley and canola are virtually the same, mostly in the northern growing areas of the prairies. So basically, farmers have decided that they're going to plant barley as well as the canola, and that kept the canola area from increasing maybe even larger than it did.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was interested to see there was a bit of an uptake in soybean acres as well. I mean, was that a surprise to anybody?
Well, I think again, soybeans have a unique advantage. First of all, again, they're an oilseed, so they've been priced relatively highly this year. And then if you combine that with the fact that doesn't require as much in the way of inputs. Certainly, nitrogen fertilizer, especially, that has become quite costly this spring. It certainly gives the soybeans a bit of an advantage there in terms of the cost of production. So I think it was anticipated that we see an increase in the soybean area. So and we managed to pick up close to 300,000 acres across Canada.
Hmm. So unless we've got some new acres hidden under the couch cushions somewhere, well, which crops are going to take the hit this spring?
Well, I think the crop that you saw the largest drop certainly was spring wheat.
Yes.
We're down about 8.8% from last year, and about 1.6 million acres were not are going to be planted to other crops this year. So that wasn't unexpected. We expected the spring wheat area to go down. It was probably a little bit larger than I personally thought, just because the spring wheat prices have rallied here as we've gone through the second half of the marketing year, and it certainly does compare well, favorably, as a part of the rotation. So that was maybe a bit of a surprise, but again, given the fact that we had increased the barley area, I think there was no place for spring wheat to go but down, unfortunately, in this report.
Did the grain trade really see it? I mean, you'd said though that it was a bit more than you would have expected. But did the was it sort of in line with what the grain trade had been seeing, or had been expecting rather?
Yeah, it was pretty close to what people were expecting, probably on the low side of the estimates. If you were to look at the pre-report estimates, I think the thing is that the acreage reduction was significantly higher than it was even south of the U.S. border. Again, the U.S. area declined about 4 to 5% in sort of the traditional spring wheat areas that we think of in the northern plains. So we saw even more pressure there. I think in the U.S. they anticipate that that area is going to drop, so maybe it will be closer on a percentage basis to the Canadian drop in area as well.
Hmm. So, just granted, it's still only Tuesday. By the time this comes out, it'll be Thursday. But do we know yet? What do we know about how the markets have responded just with the news coming out this morning?
Well, certainly with these numbers, you would anticipate that the canola and spring wheat markets, the Minneapolis futures market, would go higher today. We actually ended up finishing lower to, I would say wheat was a little bit more unchanged today. I think overall, in the longer term, this does support the new crop contracts for both spring wheat and canola. Um, the canola market in particular has a very big inverse working between old and new crop right now. And given that the crop uh, does have some dryness concerns for canola for new crop, as well as this lower area, I think um, that should support the deferred contracts a little bit more than they have been, let's say, up to this point in time. Um, with average yields, and if we do just plant this area that is forecast by Statistics Canada, we're going to have a very tough time in maintaining our exports anywhere close to what last year's exports were.
Hmm. And you mentioned dryness concerns, and of course, this wouldn't be a farming podcast if we didn't talk about the weather. Here in Winnipeg, I only just noticed the last of the snow pile I shoveled away from the back gate is gone, and the yard's already pretty dusty. I mean, what are we seeing out there as far as growing conditions? Heading into seeding.
Well, again, we did get some snow, especially in the eastern sides of the prairies. The areas that did pick up uh, significant precipitation was sort of in eastern Manitoba as well as parts of eastern Saskatchewan, but the remaining areas didn't pick up an awful lot in terms of measurable precipitation. And certainly, I think you can say for most of the prairies south of number one highway, and even in a lot of central growing areas, dry conditions still persist here. So we do have some beneficial moisture here to get the crops started, but we certainly would like to see a general rain this spring as we move into the planting season. Of course, we're already planting in some of the southern areas of the prairies, and that planting progress is going to move into the central and northern regions here over the next week to 10 days here. So certainly would like to see some moderate amounts of rainfall here over the next 2 to 3 weeks, just to help get these crops germinated properly and support some early season growth.
Yeah, I haven't checked the forecast since yesterday. Is there anything like that on the horizon?
There's nothing right now on the horizon in terms of general precipitation across the prairies. There are a series of small disturbances that will bring some scattered light precipitation. And again, if you're under those showers, it's wonderful, but those aren't nearly extensive enough to give us the amount of moisture that we need to help improve our soil moisture conditions.
Mm-hmm. So we'll be watching the skies as well as the markets. Bruce, thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Bruce Burnett is Director of Weather and Markets with Glacier Markets Farm. That's our episode for the week. Many, many thanks, of course, to Bruce and to Dr. Janos Bochner for sharing their time with us. And we'll be back in a week with more from the Glacier FarmMedia family of publications. You've been listening to Between the Rows, and I've been your host this week, Dave Bedard. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for calling the Crop Guru.
Yeah, I'm wondering about increasing yield and return with optimal P&K applications.
Reply hazy, try again.
Okay, I also need a nutrient removal calculator.
Cannot predict now.
Hold on. Are you using a magic 8-ball?
Signs point to yes.
Get less guessing and more data. Expert research, advice, and soil management tools are available for free at Nutrien Economics. That's nutrien-economics.com.